Hello, and welcome to Your Creative and Magical Life, which is hopefully your actual life, but is also this podcast, a show that explores how tarot, divination, and spirituality can help us live a life that sparkles with magic and creativity. I'm your host, Cecily Saylor. Let's make some magic. Hello, creative spirits. Welcome to episode 19 of Your Creative and Magical Life. I'm glad to be with you. This episode, we'll be talking about the devil. We have a wonderful guest to explore this card with. But first, I want to send a lot of love and concern to everyone who's dealing with, suffering through the fires in the Los Angeles area. It's been really scary and devastating to watch from many, many miles away in Texas. And just the scale and the scope and the intensity of what's happened is jaw dropping. And I can only imagine what it's been like for people to actually live through it. So my heart goes out to you. My spirit reaches out to you. If you're in Los Angeles, if you have connections to Los Angeles, of course, as someone who's been thinking about climate change and climate crisis for a while, it's also really disheartening to see yet another kind of indicator or milestone, dare I say, in this crisis that we will continue to experience. And fire, of course, is a naturally occurring phenomenon and not even always a bad phenomenon. Fire clears and renews, and it has its function, but fires of this size are not a naturally occurring phenomenon. And this, as I imagine many of you know, is the result of climate change, of warming the climate, of working or not intentionally working with the land and the ecosystems, ignoring what nature needs. And, over consuming all kinds of different things, not like water, gas. And yeah, it's just scary. So I'm reaching out to all of us at the same time because we'll be experiencing these things as well, something like this. As climate change accelerates and continues, more and more of us will have these experiences closer to where we live. So it seems appropriate, actually, to be thinking about this in relationship to the devil. We're going to get into this card more, of course, but this is a card about where the power is, how we give the power that we have away, and what happens when we become subjects of something that doesn't really deserve our energy, our spirit, and something that is not entitled to our energy and our spirit. And at this point in 2025 on Earth, capitalism is everywhere and fossil fuel consumption is ubiquitous. It's probably more prolific than it's ever been. We're not really slowing down. Even as we watch what's happening, even as we see all the things that we're told would happen are here now. we are continuing blindly into, not blindly, I guess open-eyed into a future of more of this unabated. And this episode will come out around the time of the inauguration of President Trump, who is committed to completely ignoring these crises, turning them into political poker chips, we could say, politicizing them, leveraging them, wielding more power out of them, and just continuing to lead us down a path that will only make this worse. So we're not going to talk a ton. I can't remember. I mean, we talk a little bit. We talk a little bit about the world and the systems and the devil. How can you not? But there's a lot more to the conversation than that. But I just wanted to kind of notice how this conversation lands in this particular moment with some really big things going on in the world. So I'll leave that there for us to consider. And again, just sending love and care to everyone affected, thinking about you. Our guest for today to explore the devil is Khadi Oluwatoyin. She is the executive director of Sober Black Girls Club. And I think I found Sober Black Girls Club on Instagram. And as someone, if you've been listening, I struggled with alcohol addiction, went through a recovery process, haven't had a legit drink in 8+ years. So when I saw Sober Black Girls Club on Instagram, I was really excited to see an organization that was really focused on a group of people that I imagine are even more vulnerable to the effects of alcohol, given the toxic systems that we live in. Khadi is the creator and the executive director of just such an organization. And she's also the lead mediator in her mediation practice. She is a filmmaker. She created Sober Black Girls Club in 2018 when she decided she wanted to get sober. And she noticed that many sobriety platforms did not cater to women who looked like her or shared her similar cultural and societal experiences. That same year, Oluwatoyin discovered astrology and tarot and used both to cope with the mental and emotional challenges she experienced in her addiction and early recovery. In 2018, when Sober Black Girls Club started, it was just a blog. And today it is a coast-to-coast, nonprofit 501c3 collective that provides its members with professional resources, weekly peer support meetings, a yearly weekend retreat, and more. Whether she's hosting a support meeting, writing a new script, or facilitating a mediation session, Khadi's mission is to create and hold space for healing, self-discovery, and connection. Khadi is a very cool person, and I've gotten to know her over the last couple of years. I am a proud supporter of Sober Black Girls Club, and I invite you to support them as well. I hope you enjoy this conversation as we explore together the devil. Hello, everyone. I'm very excited to be here exploring the devil card with Khadi Oluwatoyin, who is the creator, visionary leader of Sober Black Girls Club, an organization I somehow came across like several years ago and have really enjoyed supporting. And I've gotten to know Khadi a little bit more. And I think both of us have some shared experience that relates to the devil, which is why I wanted to bring Khadi here today. Khadi, hello. Thank you. How are you? How's the new year treating you so far?
Hey. Thank you for having me on here. Today I'm doing well. I told you earlier I'm burning up hot. But other than that, I'm doing well. I'm happy it's a new year. I feel a shift. I feel, yeah, I just feel like a shift in 2024, and I think it has to do with the Saturn. Um, it was, I mean, was this, no, Pluto in Capricorn.
Yes.
I'm so happy. That's why.
Yes.
I'm happy. I can really feel like the shift and just the optimism, excitement that I have. Just like it, I like even my I have like rheumatoid arthritis. Even that has improved.
Oh,
I
good.
can feel a shift.
Good. Good. Thank you. I feel
How are
that
you doing?
shift too. I'm good. Yeah, I think there's things about this year to be deeply concerned about, but at the same time, um, yeah, I feel some energy. And as a Capricorn, Sun, Moon, Mars, having Pluto move on is super, super, super great. So,
I'm scared because I've heard people saying that. The astrologers, I have stopped listening to astrology. I have literally stopped listening to certain podcasts because I don't know what that means. And I am like, the last 8 years has kind of been, I don't know if I'm just saying HELL. I don't know if folks curse in this podcast.
you
I,
can.
okay, it has been hell. So I keep on hearing astrologers say that there's things to be worried about 2025. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, maybe the devil characteristics, and I'm ignoring it. I don't want to hear. Actually, no, I kind of do want to hear, but then I kind of don't want to hear. But I'm yeah, I I just can't imagine anything being worse compared to like the last 8 years.
Okay, valid. Yeah, I mean, I'm mainly talking about the guy who's about to become our president.
Oh,
That's
okay,
that's really the only thing that
okay,
I mean, and climate change, but
true.
yeah. Anyway, um well, tell us a little bit about yourself, like what feels relevant and alive for you right now, and yeah, maybe like what's you feel this shift. What do you feel like is shifting?
Okay, I'm gonna time myself because I'm a Leo stellium, and I can talk with myself for hours. So I'll come back this and say, okay, hi everyone. So yes, Katie Oluwatoyin. My full name is Khadijat, and with this new shift, I feel myself going by that name more often. And I'm like, but everyone knows me as Katie, so I'm trying to figure that out. But yes, my full name, birth name is Khadijat. I'm from Staten Island, New York, and let's make a long story short. Long story short, I grew up in Staten Island, Nigerian Muslim household. You know me through Sober Blackness Club, so I guess I'll just kind of ease the story on through that channel. Um, it was time to go to college. I decided to go away to the furthest college I could go to in New York, and it was in Buffalo. Buffalo, my literally first night there, had my first drink, and like from the get go, from the onset, I was like, holy shit, like this is magic. From the get go, I never used alcohol socially, and um, it was because I realized alcohol had the ability to like let me really escape, and I
Mm,
love the feeling of just like not being present and not being here.
yeah.
Um, didn't know at that time, but like I faced a lot of trauma in childhood, a lot of trauma, crazy trauma. The fact that I'm
Mm,
still here, trauma. Um, no, duh, I fell into addiction trauma, but I didn't know that. Used alcohol weekends to really deal with this, to escape. Basically, went to a law school, another setting where alcohol is really prevalent, and
mm,
I further used alcohol to escape, to socialize, to deal with like trauma that I didn't even know that's what I was experiencing at that time, even in ways that are different from escapism. And it wasn't until like after I graduated law school, and I was so used to, from childhood up to law school, from like having a really filled day. I noticed early on that like the smarter I am, the prettier I am, the more ideal I was, or became, the more attention and love I received from the adults in my family. And from basically an early age, but really when I was in law school, I realized that like me being quote unquote a token black girl, didn't know I was that at that time, but me constantly exceeding, and then really exceeding higher and much more than other Black students in the school, like really made me feel good, and it made me feel good because of the attention and the rewards, quote unquote rewards, I was receiving. So once I graduated from law school, passed the bar, got a bomb apartment, bomb car, great job, I found myself in like a depression. Like I was so sad and so miserable. Didn't know why. I drank until I couldn't drink any longer. But while I was in recovery, I found myself in addiction because I was depressed when I graduated law school because working as an attorney, my life is so boring. It wasn't in comparison to the schedule that I had since I was like growing up, always just busy, always in school, after school, Quran class, gymnastics. It was just go to work, and I wasn't even getting rewarded. I was like a first year attorney. No one really cared. I was doing motions. I wasn't arguing. I was just doing a lot of boring work. And instead of like a person with healthy coping mechanism, maybe finding a hobby or just going to see a therapist, talking about this void, the only thing at that time that I knew can like really fulfill or soothe what I was feeling was alcohol. And I guess in my recovery, which leads to like a lot of the work that I'm doing now, I had to accept that a lot of my beliefs and ways of acting and how I saw myself, how I viewed other people, uh, was violent as hell. Was really based on overconsumption, overproduction, a lot of anti-blackness, and I experienced a lot of that in my home. Really, again, not understanding how can Black people be anti-Black? How can I be anti-Black when I love Black people and I love being Black? But realizing through recovery that a lot of my beliefs, how I thought I had to wear my hair, how I viewed other people who maybe didn't have certain degrees or didn't have certain like materialistic things, were just really disturbing and violent and anti-Black, and putting down the bottle was one thing, and that's why SBGC Sober Blackness Club came about, because I was attending a lot of 12-step. I don't know if you say 12-step on this podcast. You can edit it if you don't. I was attending a lot of 12-step
Why not?
meetings, and I still do today, right? But a lot of the folks were talking about, because they kept on talking about things that they had and what recovery would bring them. Like, you get sober, you can have the car, have the man, have this and that. And I'm like, hold up. This is not what I need. Like, there has to be something more to my life. There has to be something more to how I found myself in addiction and how I get myself out. And that's where, communing and fellowshipping and reading books by like Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, Nikki Giovanni, rest in peace. Reading their books helped me, like, for the first time, really see my life and experiences written down. Like, it was just so much confusion. Excuse me, finding myself in addiction, and the meetings that I was going to, 12-step meetings, even though they were helpful in me knowing that I'm not the only person who has an addiction, it wasn't helpful in me understanding how I found myself here, because I didn't have a family history of addiction. I started drinking when I was in college. I didn't feel like I was born like this. I was born with a lot of things, not with this. I felt like I could gradually see alcohol taking over my life. So since entering the world of recovery in 2018, it has been a lot about me finding out like what makes Khadijat happy, like what brings me joy, what are my true aspirations. So aside from Sober Blackness Club, I'm happy to say I finished my first short film, which I am just, yes, I'm going to send you the link like in 2 weeks. I'm going to,
yes.
I finished my first short film, which I'm just so proud about. I know a lot of people tell me like, Katie, like, no one ever likes their first film. Talk for yourself. I love my first film. And I'm putting my law degree to work. I started like a community mediation practice to help folks in like my community really understand the importance of communicating, of talking, and not suppressing. Because a lot of myself felt very suppressed growing up. Like, I felt like I couldn't be me. And again, the books that I read throughout my recovery helped me understand why, but it didn't make it any difficult breaking away from that and the practice of just really being in my authentic self, and then being able to communicate my needs, problems, indifference, excuse me, regardless of what anyone else feels. And I think that's really, really important. So I started a mediation firm to give like mediation services, avoid going to court, and just help folks in our community resolve their problems without shutting down or without resolving or turning to violence. So that's where I'm at. And yeah, thanks for letting me
Amazing. Amazing. Those are some things I didn't know about you, and I'm so glad to know about you. And congratulations on your first film
share.
and the mediation work. Like, that's huge. I think that's so important because it just seems like in America, everyone's like ready to have a fight, and um, our communication
Yeah,
skills are shit. Like, and there's no
yeah,
nervous system capacity. I'm talking collectively to like come together and work things out. Like, even at the highest level of our government, like the whole goal for half of the elected people is to not cooperate. And so, like, it's so important. So beautiful. And there's so many things in there that I think like represent what the devil card is about. So let's look at the card together if that's cool with you. And yeah, then we'll go from there. And you're bringing the modern witch version from the version from the modern witch tarot, which looks very similar to the Smith Waite version. The main difference is that the two figures are facing the other direction. Not everybody is white in your card. Good. Um, yeah, and I don't know. That seems like the main.
what is the name of the original tarot cards? I can't. It escapes me. Well, it's not escapes. I'm just gonna mispronounce it. I don't want to do that. What's the original?
Yeah,
Like, is
this
that what
is
it is? The
it
original
was known
Smith
as the
Waite
Rider Waite,
card?
and more and more we say the Smith
Rider
Waite
Waite.
because
Yes,
Pamela
yes.
Coleman Smith was the artist whose name was left off the deck. So um yeah, I try to say Smith Waite. Sometimes I forget.
Got it.
Um, yeah,
Got it.
so
Got
what
it.
do we
Thanks
see
for that.
in this card? What's happening? Like, people are listening. Let's describe it like maybe they've never seen it before.
So on my card, the modern tarot, excuse me. There are two women who are tied by chains. The chains um, on both ends are kind of like loops, and it's around their necks. And the chain connects in the center. The two women, they look like women from the back. Again, I can only see the women from the back, are wearing horns. And they're facing this goat like character, which they do say Capricorns are the goat. Um, so yeah, they're facing this goat-like character that has a star. I don't know what that star stands for. Maybe we can get into that. What does that star stand for? That has a star on in the front
Yeah,
of
and the
its head.
goat is sitting on the block that the two women are chained to, and like much bigger figure.
Mm.
Like the goat man, the devil is like two or three times the size of the humans. The humans also, do your humans have tails? Mine have tails. Okay. Sometimes
No, not on
tails,
mine.
sometimes not. They do have horns. And the devil figure, so seated, has like hairy thighs, hairy calves, like claw-like feet, bare-chested, and
Mhm.
the devil's right hand is held up in this like kind of like may the yeah, like Star Trek, Star
Star
Trek
Trek.
configuration. I can't remember. I'm so bad at thinking of things on the spot, but I can't remember what they say when they do that. And then the other hand, the left hand is holding a torch and pointed down. So kind of similar to the magician, where we have like one hand pointing up, one hand pointing down. Is yours doing something different?
It is. I'm just marveling about how specific and detailed you got with this card. Okay, yes. Yeah.
My dad worked in radio and he would do play-by-play for sports. And he would say that sometimes these were like small town radio stations, but that even like visually impaired people would call in and be like, I really appreciate how much you describe what's happening. So he
That's
repeats that
important.
sometimes. So I try to like uh get into the details. Anyway, big horns on the devil and some bat wings. Looks like bat wings. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and that upturned. And the devil's face is like, bearded, like pointy ears, these like wide, wild eyes. And then the space behind them, like everything else is black back there. So this is card number 15. It is also the card associated with Capricorn. And I found doing like the numerology that the devil is my personal card for this year. So I'm working with the card again. But Khadijah, tell us what this card symbolizes for you, some of the meanings, some of the associations you have when you pull this card in a reading.
Well, I think first the first I guess something that I've noticed is like how I'm just so quick to like I want to get to the point. I'm a person who just like wants with the end goal. Like you ask me a question, bam. Like I don't sit down to analyze things as much as I should. I'm working on my patience. I'm not a patient person when it comes to like my individual goals. I'm just like a go, 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 go. And I've always been like that. Like if I have something in mind, then I'm going to work day and night to like get it. I'm not necessarily going to do a lot of research. I'm just going to do it and then get the things wrong, like and just fix it as I go on. Which over time I realized it's better to be patient, research, take some time, something, focus on it, sit with it, smile at it, and then move forward. And so I think it needs some balance, but I think when you're such a, like me, I'm such at a far other end that like I need to like just take my time on that side for a bit. So that's one thing. Two, with the devil. So it's really interesting that both arms, like you said, one is facing upward, the other one's facing down. But for me, okay, I'm sorry. I got too lost up in this
That's okay.
card. It's too lost in this card. It's interesting. As you were describing it, I'm like, wow, wow, wow. But for me, what the devil card, did you ask me what the devil card means for
Yeah.
me and what it
Yeah.
symbolizes? Okay. For me, the devil card represents instant gratification, which I love, compared to like working hard and or taking time and actually working for something. And the devil card representing the Capricorns has always been so odd to me because in my head, Capricorns are like the opposite. However, what I think, like my brother's a Capricorn, I have best friends who are Capricorns, but what I realize is that like with them, I guess they're upset. I know people say the devil card represents addiction, which again has always been really. I tried not to do homework before I came on here. I
Yeah.
tried to just really get my honest impressions of what I think about the devil
Yeah.
card. Um, However, when I think about like my brother and friends who are Capricorns, I think about a lot of their obsessions are not like everyday obsessions. Like someone is addicted to alcohol. I'm not saying it's normal, but it's like okay, right? It's like a lot of the Capricorns they're addicted to like working hard, to like getting money, to like I guess shopping and like they're addicted to things that I don't want to say are not normal because I think they are common, but I think they're just not talked about enough. And so they work hard towards those things, I guess, because they are hard workers. So all I see is the hard work, but I kind of ignore like what is it that they're working towards?
Mm.
What is it that they're trying to get? So when I think of the devil, honestly, I really don't. So I don't. It's hard for me to like associate with Capricorns, even though I get it. I know I'm having the romanticized versions of Capricorns. I think Capricorns are very good of showing their stoic side, of showing like the hard work and just from my own experiences and now that I will say it's kind of like anyone working with mental health and emotional health, you kind of know as common says how we look on the outside, how we function on the outside. is hardly ever a representation um, of what's going on the inside. It's not a full story. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and really learn about like why is the devil card associated with Capricorns? And also, I love Capricorn, so I'm not going to talk bad. I just don't associate this time with anything negative. That's it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, it is kind of an interesting association. When I first realized that was the Capricorn card, I was like, how do I feel about this? And I do think I do think Capricorns, like, even though they're stoic and they're hardworking, I don't know about all of them. I can't speak for all of them. And I think there's some kind of like kinkiness. And I don't mean that necessarily like sexually always, but it could be. But there's like also this desire for blowing off steam or like getting into, yeah, some of like, yeah, like you said, obsessions, but like, I don't know, like topics, like different ways of being playful. And the devil, if we think in like Christian terms, as a fallen angel, like was once like mainstream, I guess, like belonging to all the other angelic entities,
Mm.
and then made this choice to sort of fall away and go into this different space. And I think that may be true for some Capricorns. And I don't want to like harp too much on the Capricorn angle, but I think there's something in this card for me that has a lot to do with liberation, especially, we see these two figures chained to the block, and they don't actually look like they're in a lot of pain. They don't look like they're, if I was chained to that guy, that big giant devil, I would probably have a look. I would like be a little distressed. And they look sort of normal. In my card, they're facing forward. They look very peaceful. And it kind of makes me think sometimes about like, you work at the corporation and you're having a conversation at the water cooler with your friend, like your coworker, you're just like chit-chatting. It's like, what are you watching on Netflix, whatever. And there's not this acknowledgement. In my analogy, the corporation is like extractive, is not paying the workers enough, is anti-union, is like doing things that are always focused on money and not necessarily like focused on health and wellness of employees, of the earth, of whatever.
Yeah.
And so these two people are at the water cooler, like chit chatting, and there's this like devil over their shoulder that they're not even noticing, much less talking about. And so it's like the devil in the card has this power over them. Their movement is limited. Their time in a way is limited, but they're sort of like, it's fine. Like, this is just where I am. And they're not even aware of the fact that their power has been displaced over to this devil. So a lot of times when I see this card, it's about like, where did my power go? Where did I let it slip away to? Where might it be like, it slipped away somewhere and I can get it back. But like, what do I have to do? And so with my own journey with alcohol, that was a big thing. Like, so much of my power had been drained through the money I spent on alcohol, the way I felt when I was drinking, the things I could not do when I was drinking or when I was hungover, the things I could not think about because I was thinking about when I was going to get a drink next, like, et cetera, et cetera. And then when I quit drinking, it was like I had all this energy back. Like I had all this power back. I didn't know what to do with it at first, right? It was like a slow process. Anyway, that was a lot. Let me pause. I feel like you have some thoughts brewing, so you chime in.
No, first I want to say like your newsletters, just hearing you go over this card is this. It just gave me the same feeling that I get when I read your newsletters. You're just your words are very expansive, and they make honestly, like I told you, I just want instant gratification. I want answers now. And I'm used to like tarot being that avenue for me, but like the way you ask questions about different cards and readings, it's just very expansive. And I guess for me, it makes me look at like tarot in a more maybe this is not the right word, but like humanistic way, like in a way where like this is a tool.
Mm.
I am living the life that I like. I can't necessarily rely on a reading to just magically fix my experience or fix a problem. And as a person who likes instant gratification, so I know sometimes my cards be upset with me, like, girl, you haven't picked me up in a while, but I get upset. I'm like, well, you didn't give me the answer I was looking for, or I've been pulling cards every day and nothing magical is happening. And it's
Mm.
like, well, you have to make the magic in your life. And it can be as simple as like just going outside and smiling at someone. I've realized over a couple of years, like the magic is in the details. But and then in terms of like the double card, I was thinking about while you were talking. This is well, I'll just say this. This is not a card I normally pull.
Mm.
You know, I told you the other day, the card I always pull is a justice card. And I'm like, oh, I'm tired, okay? I don't want to be strong. The devil is not a card that I regularly pull. However, I feel like I saw it the most in like 2019 when I first got into tarot. And I was at the height of my addiction. So I thought because the devil was, just seeing the devil on the one set, having no real knowledge or experience with tarot, um, you know, at that time really going through the books of explanations and just as soon as you read like the first sentence putting it down, like I don't want to read this,
Mm.
like, like you know what I
Yeah.
mean. I don't want to.
Especially if you're still like in addiction, denial. And denial, I think, is a big part of the devil card. It's like you can't, and I experienced that in like, I mean, part of me knew I had a problem, and part of me knew I had a problem for a long time. But a bigger part of me was like, let's try to solve some other easier, like less shameful problems first. And I would try that in different ways and keep having the same fucking problems until finally it was like, okay, I give. Like, this is the problem, and this is the problem I have to address. And the denial had to stop, like, so, um, yeah, there are a couple other things in what you shared as you were, sharing about yourself and your journey that remind me of this card, but I just want to check and see if anything else is percolating that you want to share.
For sure, you just saying what you shared just now. Like when I started SPGC in 2018, I was clear that I was well. It should have been clear that I was still in addiction. Like I created it as a means to like get help, right? And slowly but surely, folks started seeing me as like this role model or this like person or this expert, which is that made it clear I'm not a mental. I'm from New York. I'm a lawyer. I'm Nigerian. Like I am. I don't put myself down anymore because I accept who I am. But girl, I'm not no mental health professional. Okay, I I like being authentic. I like being real, and I feel like I just don't like to be compared to mental health professionals. Let's put it like that. Like I just don't. Um, that sounded shady, but I just thought of myself as a professional. Anyways, let's move on from that. And why I don't want to be classified as a mental health professional. But a lot of people saw me like that. I guess because it's another way to put me on a
Mm,
pedestal that like I'm not trying to be
yeah.
on. I'm just trying to be real and honest about our experiences and be real and honest about the solutions. I don't have time to, to cope things and not make people uncomfortable. Like I don't want to be in that position. However, as I became like just out with my story, I'm not really too sure what about my story garnered the amount of attention that it did. But I started to go like I met like Tamara Hall and like I'm on the Red Table Talk and it all felt good. At that time I didn't realize again I was starting slowly getting to tarot and astrology, but one of like a real main component, not main, oh, I'll say main, a main component of myself is that I always felt bad for like needing attention. And it's like, no, Katie, you like validation and it's okay. Like it's okay to admit that like you like validation and you like to be helpful. You like to have purpose. You want purpose. Um, So with that being said, because again, I was still trying to understand myself and learn about how I got myself into addiction and this whole recovery thing, I allowed myself to be like distracted from my own sobriety and recovery to really help other people in a capacity that I never signed up for, to really be in the public. I can't control how people perceive me. I can't, but I was more putting more energy into helping other people with their recovery and talking about recovery, inclusive recovery, than actually focusing on my recovery. It was easier to do that. Like you said, it was easier to help everyone else, to be a mod.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until last year. I mean, I'll be very honest with you. I mean, no one ever asks me about my sobriety date, and I just don't bring it up. But that's another thing. Like, no one asks me that, and it's just so interesting how, like, I mean, I understand why, because it could be a little invasive, but I do think it's very interesting that in like the 5 years that I have been in this recovery online community, no one has like asked me like, "Hey, like, how are you, like, how are you sober? What are you practicing to maintain your sobriety?" Like, folks really, and it's so interesting. I don't know why, but anyways, it wasn't until last year, like as I was seeing that the girls in my club with who I started this club with were celebrating 3 years, 4 years of sobriety, and I kept on just having multiple slips. I, the most sobriety I ever had at that time was a year, continuous. And I know it's not a
Mm.
race. I know numbers are not everything, but I also know that it was that way because I wasn't pouring into myself and my own recovery. I wasn't being honest about what I needed to stay sober, to stay in recovery, and I was choosing this image and this image and instant gratification, everyone adoring me over the actual thing that got me, like, the actual recovery. And last year, I just said, "Oh no, no, I'm done." I had to put a lot of things on hold, or just say this is on pause. Tell people I'm not doing this or that. I realized that like the longer stint of sobriety I do have, the more magic, I'm sorry, I do see in my life. Like
It's
I
real.
I don't want to equate it to time, but I do feel like, especially with like my Yoruba, I'm from the Yoruba tribe, so I'm learning about traditional Yoruba religion, and I do feel like my, what do you call it, my taboo is alcohol, is substances. I think that I do have to give it up for good for me to see things manifest in my life the way I know it can, the way I want it to, the way I'm craving, the way I'm drinking alcohol and doing all these other stuff, hoping that, like, thinking that the sensation that I think those things are going to give me, I can feel those things by giving it up and then going after the things I actually truly want. Yeah, hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I think that's like, I don't know if that's true for everyone, but I found that to be true for me. Like, I think part of my drinking was like, I think I always had I was journaling about this morning actually, but like, I think my whole life I had this sense of like attraction or allure with the numinous, that feeling of something bigger than all of the stuff that's like down here on the earth level. So whether that was like ghost stories or, animals in the sunlight or like looking up at the trees swaying in the breeze or whatever. And I think I didn't know what to do with that or like how to connect with that or what that would even look like or that was a thing. It was just like this sense. And then alcohol kind of simulates that in a way. Like it makes you at first, or it did for me, um, feel free. Like I was a shy person. I didn't have siblings. I had some like, um, yeah, like I just social anxiety and like probably some neurodivergence. And so alcohol just let some like filters come off and I could be more funny. I could be more like interactive with people, and I felt more comfortable because, like it just you don't give as many fucks, right? And so and it simulates that kind of like spiritual, that feeling I think we're looking for spiritually, but ultimately it will take you like to hell, it'll take you down into the dirty ditch, and there's nothing there for you. Yeah, but when I quit, like the whole reason I can have this podcast, or that I have this business, or that I know about tarot or can share about tarot, or like feel any level of confidence or comfort, like helping other people work with it, all of that came after I quit, So it's hard. It's like just kind of stunning to me. Like, what if I hadn't quit? I would not be in good shape, for one thing. And there's so much that I would have missed. And I'm not saying like I clearly had a problem. I had, my father is an alcoholic. He doesn't drink now. Both my grandfathers were alcoholics. One of them died from complications of his alcoholism, so like there was the genetic part, there was the part where it was modeled for me. And just like I started early and kept going until I couldn't anymore. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying everybody's got a different relationship to substances, and
Yeah.
mine was like mine was kind of extreme. But I want to come back to um why you created SBGC, and from where, like, when I first quit, it was like the first day I quit, I took myself to an AA meeting, which was like the most embarrassing thing. Like the before I went to AA, it was like having to take myself to AA would be like, you failed, like you're a loser. And I didn't like think everyone who went to AA was like,
Mhm.
I just like couldn't associate myself with that. But it was the help that was there. It was free. There were meetings going on all over town at different times of day. And there was no fucking way I could quit by myself. And so that's where I went. And it was really helpful. I went a lot of the time, like I went every day for a long time. People were really loving and supportive, especially when they knew you were new. They could see you were scared. They could see you were like raw. And they wanted to help. But those spaces were also really white. And so my assumption over here is like, if you were doing 12-step programs, that you're looking around and it's like, I don't see myself here. But, what was it like for you? What ins- what made you see like, oh, I need to start something else that is this, but not this?
Yeah. So I just want to first, it's not a disclaimer, but maybe, whatever, a disclaimer, is that like if I need an AA meeting, if I need, SPGC will only have meetings like 4 times a week. And sometimes, again, I had to see the difference, make the difference, the sand, the line in the sand, all those analogies of like, I need to be helped. Like, it's too late in SBGC. Everyone thinks that I'm helping them. It's just the illusion or the appearance that like I'm at something higher, and no matter how many stories I tell, no matter like ambitious confessions, it's still like I'm not being kind of viewed amongst my own peers as like, this is a girl who needs support in recovery as well, needs to be checked on, needs things as well. So I had to be very honest with myself. So I say this to say, like, if I need a meeting today, like I do go. I go to like an AA meeting, and I go to a Buddhist recovery meeting every week now. And I just go for fellowship, just to talk to different people. Honestly, I like to talk, just to like fellowship. So I just want to put that out
Yeah.
there. I don't hate AA or stuff that. Okay. But some of their ways are dead wrong, and let's get into it. Okay. So, I remember like one of the first AA meetings. So there's two 12-step meetings that I remember distinctively that really made me upset, made me angry. One was when I attended in Buffalo, New York, where I went to maybe like the first 3 months of like when my addiction was bad, when it was like, okay, I need help, and like folks thought that I had to leave New York City to get help. I went to Buffalo, New York, and at that time, I don't remember exactly what murder was in the news. I don't remember. It was a black man got shot by the police. I don't remember exactly which. I want to say it was George Floyd. Actually, it was George Floyd. And I remember just being in a meeting, and everyone is just talking normally. I'm like on the verge of tears. I I remember sitting in that chair and just feeling like, what is the point of living? Like, what is the point of being here? Like, I was just so, I felt so low, and everyone around me is just chatting, talking, and this was like a predominantly white meeting, but mixed folks. Buffalo is pretty like is pretty um, mixed in some ways, right? It's pretty, when I say mixed folks, like black, white, immigrants, brown, Native Americans, Buffalo, New York. It's pretty mixed with people from different ethnicities. And I was just so freaking confused. So that was fine. The next morning, because I was going to outpatient there, I went to another 12-step meeting that was across my outpatient, and that meeting was full of black people. Same thing. No one said anything about George Floyd's death. Mm-hmm. And I'm not laughing at that. I'm just it was just astonishing to me. And I said something. I said, "Are we not going to talk about what happened yesterday?" No, we don't talk about. Are you guys out of your mother mind? Like, you guys, this is the stuff that will keep me drinking, ignoring pain, ignoring harm, pretending like things are not existing. And these meetings were mostly older folks, mostly. But like you said, they're very caring. They're nice. They'll take care of you. You know, folks were getting me vitamins. Folks were like giving me money from their scratch offs. Like, they were helping me out. So they were like loving, and I will always appreciate and love and I can never down them per se. But the practice and idea that we only focus on our recovery and ignore the things that could possibly jeopardize our recovery, ignore the things that jeopardize our existence, was crazy to me. And that's the mindset of a lot of black boomers. They feel like that's the mindset that I grew up with. If you just shut your mouth, if you just did go to school, if you just look a certain way, white folks will accept you, and therefore I will accept you. I didn't realize that that's how things were in motion at my home growing up. But again, through learning of acting, like, why my parents acted certain ways, why were they just so angry anytime I did anything remotely quote unquote, like, just existing. Honestly, I can't even say remotely anything, just existing, especially being around white folks. Why do they act the way they acted? And that's how I learned that this all really revolved on being anti-black, white supremacy, capitalism, all these harmful ideologies. And even though I didn't know at that time, like at that time I didn't read bell hooks book. Sorry, excuse me. That time I did not read a single bell hooks. Why is it a bell hooks book? Bell hooks book. I didn't. But I knew that was wrong. I knew that, like, oh no, that was wrong. Second experience was when I was in Staten Island, New York. So now I'm back in my home city, you know, trying to get sober. And the closest AA meeting, 12-step meeting that I could attend that night was like 2 buses away. You know, I'm bad in my addiction, no car, back in my parents' house, 2 buses away. I still come to find out now that there are 12-step meetings closer to my neighborhood, which is a good thing. So I don't want to make it seem that 12-step meetings are not spread out more now. But at that time, it was like 2 buses away. And then I remember getting there, and there was a speaker meeting. And the speaker, she was talking about before her addiction. And she was like, yeah, you know, before my addiction, I was just really sad. And things were just so horrible. You know, I was living in Marines Harbor. I was like, bitch, what's wrong with Marines Harbor? What does that even mean? You was living, in my head, I said, first of all, I was the only black person in this meeting. I already knew what that meant. It was a black neighborhood. It was what really Marines Harbor it is a black neighborhood mixed with immigrants, but it was a black neighborhood. And I looked at her. I was just like, I don't live in a dangerous. I don't really think any neighborhood in Staten Island. Staten Island is dangerous, but Marines Harbor, the neighborhood I lived in, is definitely not dangerous. So
Mm.
what did you mean by that? Besides saying that there was a lot of black people, you were living in a black neighborhood, and if you're familiar with uh, Staten Island's landscape, it is segregated. There's a South Shore, which is where I attended that meeting, and then there's the North Shore, which is where a lot of black people and people of color and immigrants live. So I just said no. Like this cannot be the solution to what I'm experiencing. And then the third wasn't a meeting, but just the rule, which they no longer practice now. But the rule was that you couldn't talk about outside issues. What does that even
Mm.
mean? Basically, you're saying that I can't talk about being black. That's exactly what you're talking about. You don't want to talk about being black. And the idea of that, like, recovery doesn't see color, addiction doesn't see color, that's like, people love to rewrite history.
Yeah.
Um, Addiction doesn't seem color. It doesn't see color. Anyone can fall into addiction. However, I feel like the way some communities, like myself, how we identify addiction is kind of distorted. When I first was experiencing it, when the doctor first told me I had addiction, I was like, "Are you crazy? Addiction is only for white people." I didn't even think black people experience addiction from alcohol. I know I saw like people who suffered from drugs, but to me that was extreme. I didn't see examples of just black people everyday. Not to say that folks who are suffering from extreme drug addiction are not everyday people, but I'm saying everyday, like working, going to school, having. I did not see that. I knew like I saw like, the white mom's wine, which I didn't really even think that was addiction either. But really, what I thought was an addiction was a white man with like the belly. That's what was my idea of like an addiction. Um, so that's one. Two, when we talk about the temperance movement, and what folks say, like, when I bring this up, people are always surprised. I'm like, but the same energy it took me to find this out, you could have found it out if you cared. Instead of saying that recovery doesn't see color, that there's no racism, right? But instead of that, you could have just did your research. But like to learn, as I was learning about again, how does addiction affect Black people? It started all the way from like the temperance movement, when our country basically said to white men, basically, you're drinking too much, right? The violence was soaring, abuse, domestic violence, abuse, just overall violence in the home, outside of the home. And when Black enslaved folks, basically they were enslaved at that time, were trying to join in on the movement, they were told no. In fact, civil rights leaders like Frederick Douglass wrote about how enslaved people were given alcohol to basically keep them meek and to have them continuously follow directions. He said this in a speech that he gave on a Sunday, a popular speech that anyone can Google up and find it. So how can recovery be excluded from racism when this country was founded on racism? And then we have documentation. This, I want to say 1830s, but please don't quote me on the year. Anyone can look this up. The speech of Frederick Douglass basically saying that enslaved people were given alcohol and to keep them enslaved, basically not to devise plans of escaping, and it formed addictions for them,
Right.
and that's why he was basically advocating for abstinence, and then all the way up until like W. Du Bois and Malcolm, up until Malcolm X era, was advocating on sobriety, on recovery, because they really felt like alcohol and drugs kept us, even if we were no longer physically enslaved, we were still going to be mentally enslaved. So the fact that like at that time when I feel like I came into this recovery realm, no one thought that was important to share. No one thought that was important for us to discuss. I just felt like it was racist. And again, I can say that people in 12 steps and AA have helped me a lot, but it doesn't mean that the foundation of this program, I'm not going to pretend that the foundation of this program just welcome Black people in it. I'm not going to pretend that this rule of not talking about outside issues is to protect who?
Right.
It's to protect who?
Yeah.
And if I can't talk about the things that I don't know, if I can't talk about the things that I'm reading in books that are bringing me liberation, that are freeing my mind, that are making me feel like excited about life again,
And supporting your sobriety.
Exactly. How can I just stay in this one area? I can't.
Yeah.
And that's why I created Sober Blackness Club. And that's, I always tell people, people tell me that SBGC helped them become sober and they credit it. Great. I always say we're not a pathway. We just want to provide a space for you to be able to not feel othered. A lot of people feel othered. A lot of Black folks, a lot of our members do feel othered. They feel like, even folks who do attend 12-step meetings, they say, like, I can never share this with my sponsor. It should not be like
Right.
that. But until this country solves its problem with race, we have to create alternate additional spaces where I can just share I can share about, anyone can share about what they did at their job, how they acted at a funeral. People should be able to share their experiences without feeling like they're gonna be, labeled stupid or basically add to the negative stereotypes of Black people that this country still wants to perpetrate. And I won't make this episode about race, so that's it.
You can make it about race.
I know, that was a joke. That was a joke.
Well, I think the devil is a great card that exemplifies white supremacy. Like the devil in the room in America is white supremacy. And like, white people want to walk around like they can't see the devil. The devil's not there. We don't know what you're talking about. We don't talk about that here. And it's like, no, there's a big fucking devil sitting in the corner. And like, what? And so, and I think when you were describing like how you came to awareness around the internalized white supremacy or anti-blackness in some of your family members or even in yourself, that's like working with the devil, and I think the history of this country and the many of the problems that we face and perpetuate are and like I'm not the first one to say this, I know, is like based on the fact that we will not acknowledge slavery for the huge crime that it was, much less all of the subsequent crimes that come from continuing to ignore and deny it. And denial here again is like how one way anyway, white supremacy maintains itself. So the devil is a perfect card for that. Hey, friends, this is a quick interruption because I want to invite you into the Creative Magic Collective, the community where explorations like these continue with other beautiful creative spirits. In the Creative Magic Collective, we journal together, we create together. That means we get on Zoom and we journal or we create. That happens 3 times a month. There's 2 journaling sessions, 1 create session, and we also have every month tarot office hours, which is a gathering where we play with the cards a little bit, but you also get to bring your questions, your conundrums, share about things going on in your practice, things you're noticing, and hear from other people, not just from me, what they're discovering and how the cards are connecting to their lives, which just multiplies and expands our understanding of the tarot. We also have a monthly workshop exploring the magical and or creative arts. So in January, we did a workshop exploring the hermit. In the previous microdose episode, I talked more about the hermit and that workshop if you want to check it out. In February, we're doing a self-love ritual guided by Maria Minnis, who is the amazing guest, tarotologist, and author in our Justice episode. In March, we're doing a nature poetry workshop. It's a really great journey we're going on this year. And speaking of the devil is the type that wants to keep us isolated. Our culture works to isolate us, to make us feel independent or make us believe that we must be independent. that we should not be interdependent. They don't want us organizing together or tapping into our collective power or building our own communities. They want us reliant on them while they extract all kinds of stuff from us that is really ours. So, the Creative Magic Collective is an antidote to that. It's a place where we can be with each other, where we can be magical with each other. We can explore creativity, talk about mysterious things, make magic together. Sometimes some of us are like the only witchy person, the only woo person in our IRL life. You know, we maybe don't have a lot of friends who are into tarot or magic or doing creative things. And so the Creative Magic Collective is a place where you can just find a whole beautiful room of friends like that. And there's folks of all ages, folks of all different professions, and just a really beautiful community. We also have a chat space, multiple chat spaces actually, where you can share tarot spreads in the moment, ask questions. I share tarot spreads there every full moon, every new moon. And we also have this rich, growing learning library. Every new workshop that comes through the collective gets added to the library. And then there's a bunch of others that I've taught over the years. So if you're looking for community, if you're wanting to really deepen and expand your magical and creative practices this year, check out the Creative Magic Collective. Go to typewritertarot.com. You'll see the collective page there on the site. And if you just got here, if you just found this podcast, if you're like, I don't know if I'm into this, you can also just sign up for the newsletter and see how you feel. You'll be hearing more about these things along the way, plus other great stuff. So thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. We'd love to have you in the community if you're ready. All right, back to the show.
Can I say, I honestly feel like I feel more connected to this card now, in a way, because yeah, and even now in my family, so when I learned about certain things that have happened in my life that were explained, I was excited to share those things with family members, hoping that like this can give us like, okay, we know why we've done some of these hurtful things, but we don't really like, you know, maybe we didn't mean it, but maybe we can really learn to do better. And again, the first 3-4 years of my recovery wasn't focused on me. It was focused on like trying to get people who I I want to be in my life, wanted to be my life, to understand like the want, like the just the wantness of their ways. And then I just had to accept, like literally accept that some people's lives depend on power dynamics. They only feel powerful by making other people feel weak. And not only do they only feel powerful by making other people feel weak or unimportant, the person can be related to them. They don't really, they
Word.
I can't, I try not to put the words in their heads, but I've had to just be honest with myself. Katie, they don't give a fuck. Like, what else could it be? Besides, they are not interested in finding importance in their own lives. They're not interested in putting effort into something or some cause or themselves. They're interested in controlling. They're interested in dominating. And I just said, you know what, Katie, I can't think about why anymore. Like, honestly, I just have to say, just take your actions for what it is. But not like even the double card. Like I had a cousin who, whatever, just gave birth. I haven't spoken to her, and this is a cousin I grew up with, like group sisters. My addiction. When I say like my addiction just really turned my life upside down in the negative ways, but also in the positive ways of just like really assessing my values, what's important, how I've been living, how I want to live, how people have hurt me, how I have hurt other people, and really make a conscious decision to do something about it. And it also taught me that people can have all that information and still not want to make a conscious decision to do something about it. And how am I supposed to view you besides you being a very evil, nasty person? Because to me, in my head, only someone who's so evil would want to continue imposing harm on other people after they've been given the opportunity to learn about how this causes harm. So, anyways, this devil card is speaking to me after hearing your share in a way of just like, I've had to like separate from people who, girl, you could not have told me, and like you could never have told me that these certain people would not be in my life. Like if I even talk about it anymore, I will be in tears. But anyways, but I made the decision that I cannot be in community with people who operate in power dynamics. I cannot be in community with people like that. But I still get pulled in when things happen, like someone has a baby or um, someone passes away, and I don't have the answers. These are all very new things to me because I don't have people in my family modeling these things. I've always questioned and asked, why are you still living at the house? Why are you still here? Why are you still here? I just have to accept that this is the life that they want. So looking at this devil card now, just hearing your multiple explanations, it's like there's two, like I can be in that environment and just do the best I can to protect myself and my recovery. But then I feel like the other way is like, even though it's hard, it's lonely, it brings tears to my eyes nearly 24/7. I want the future, regardless if it's my kids or in years, because again, I'm not really connected with my family now, but like in years, if a nephew or niece comes to me and I want, like, I'm like, the other side to me is like lineage. It's just like, it has to stop.
Mm.
Like, this has to stop, and there has to be at least one person willing to, again, say what has happened to them, acknowledge what they have done to others, and then make a conscious decision to move forward. And
That's why you're getting the justice card all the time, is you're really, really working with these questions and really like finding your truth. And like the devil is that invitation to wake up and see what's really going on. And when you're the only person in the room who's like, the devil is over there. Everybody, can y'all see? Like, when you're the only one at the dinner table, then they're gonna be like, what are you talking? You know, like they're gonna make you feel crazy, and
right.
these differences will show up, and then it's a challenging card, but it's so liberating. I think when like you decide for yourself, like, am I going to let myself be led through life by the way it has been or the way that these other people have been doing it around me, or with this like unconscious sensibility of like power, power dynamics are definitely at play in this card? Or am I going to like listen to myself? Am I going to break the chains? Like, I hate to be that cliche about it.
I mean, there's change
There's
literally in the
literally
car.
chains. Yeah. And the other thing, as you were talking, that this made me think of is like the devil card as a representation of the cycle breaker, as you're talking about. Like, there are legacies as well, like alcohol being one of them, but not the only, but also white supremacy, um, that I want to do differently. And so like the family, the ancestors ahead of me are not necessarily going to understand that or going to be able to like join me in that, and they're not modeling it for me. I have to like look to other models, and I have to like listen to myself and my creativity and my imagination and think like, well, if I don't want to do that, what can it look like? um and so that cycle breaker energy feels very devil as well, and I'm glad you brought that in. And with a little bit of the time we have left, I wonder if you can talk about, I feel like the question I'm wanting to ask is just like what you find the Black women in the club are getting? Like, what happens for them when they pick up this journey? What happens for them when they come together in celebration of each other in their own space that does not have a white gaze or, the devil in the room? Um, and you've been doing it for several years now. It's been growing. It's beautiful. Yeah, tell me what delights you about, like, what comes, what's been possible.
So first, I always say like anyone. I always recommend everyone, black, white, male, female. We used to use the terms woman, man, non-binary, anyone, um, to pick up Black women in self Sisters of the Yam, Black women in self recovery, because that just puts so much magic and optimism and possibility in our lives. So when people find that book, they're automatically like crying. You know, we read it for the first 2 years, so it's not in our, it may come back in our rotation, but I feel like that's what Sober Blackness Club has. I tried my best to model SBGC after, um, is that book. So one, they get like just knowledge of what's possible. Then they understand, because I think like SBGC, like folks find out about SBGC after coming from like a 12-step meeting,
Okay.
or maybe, or there's some people who join our meetings in rehab, like in outpatient. SBGC has grown, which I'm so proud of. Now that judges will like have a sign off to count as a meeting, and outpatient programs and rehabs allow their Black patients to actually attend our meetings.
Awesome.
Therapists are recommended as. So it just blows me
So
away
good.
sometimes. But yeah, so but it's okay. So it's one, I think, possibility from that book. I always tell newcomers to read that, and then it's just to do without the shame. Like you don't have to be ashamed, and usually I will share something at a meeting. Like, my mind is always unlocking. I'm like, oh, I did do that. And then, folks would be like, Katie, like, I did it too, or I would never have told anyone if you didn't say it. Like, and by modeling that it is okay to talk about maybe the worst thing that you have done, or a part of you that you desperately are ashamed of. I feel like it's important that we say it. And some of these things are harmful. They might initially be embarrassing, or bring out shame in the onset, but I think it gives these women a space to know that it is okay. And two, one thing that I always say is that like being Black is not monolithic. We don't have to agree with each other. That's not the point. There's another thing I always say. I always say some sort of Black stuff is not for everyone. I always say, no, people, especially in the beginning, they hear that Black name and they're like, oh, sis, fam, okay. So we're Black, we are anti-Black. We're trying our best to be anti-Black, to be anti-homophobic, and we're just colorism, which are both three things that are rampant in our community. So a lot of folks are not used to that, let's say, per se, right? Again, there's this like notion that if we can say whatever we want to say as long as it's the truth, and that's the practice of the Black community. So one thing that these women are getting are just like values and practices that might not have been shown to us, the importance of it as we were growing up, but we're understanding how this applies to all of us, no matter what. We used to hear things like, well, words are just words, they're not harmful. We have all been in this meeting and have shared about something that our parents have said to us, or a teacher has said to us, that has affected us to this day, made us feel worthless. So even though you might not understand how that term may be offensive to queer folks, or how this term may be offensive to like dark skinned women, it is, because we know there's studies that show we have people here who are saying it is. And even though you don't feel hurt from that, there's words that you have felt hurt by. So I feel like in our club, the women who understand that we're not just going to be brought together because we're Black. We're not going to be brought together because we're Black women or girls, not performing roles, trans women. But that's not just why we're here. Like, we're here because we're Black, we're girls, women, trans women, non-binary people, and we want to change the practices and the mindset and the beliefs that we have been engaging in or been victim to, even if we don't realize it. So they get this new way of thinking about things. And even me, I could have always thought I was the smartest person in the room until I started reading and realized there was a lot of shit I did not know. Like I was so ignorant to so many things. And then I just feel like again, we open our club to all folks, to folks who are in recovery, practicing it or considering it. Considering it means that they may still be drinking. But it shocks me all the time when I see a person come, like, now we have multiple meeting hosts, but I'll know of a person coming to a meeting like for months, right? A year. And then to hear like, oh, I'm still struggling and I'm still drinking, and I'm like, but you come here every week and you come here sober, and they're like, yeah, this means that much to them, and that's what I care about. Like, I want folks to feel supported and cared for, even if they're still in the addiction, even if they're still using substances in a way that they don't want to. So I will say I think they get like the message and hope of optimism from like the books that we read from our leaders. I think they get new practices, new ways of doing things that even if they don't realize apply to them, it does apply to you in some way, especially with how we use our words and how we communicate. They are able to like release any shame when it comes to like our shares and storytelling. And I'm a double story, and so they're able to be like, okay, I can tell my story too without feeling shame. And then there's the last thing that I recently said last, but I forgot already. All right, so that's what they get out of it. Or community. It was community. Yeah. It was about people who are still even I get so shocked. Like, I think 2 weeks ago I found out, which is not a big deal, but in my head, I still have my biases sometimes, or just distorted way of thinking. It's like, oh wow, and you're still here. You're still coming here. Like, that's it. I get shocked, and it's like, okay, you shouldn't be shocked, but I am. I'm shocked and moved and proud that despite you enduring, like we know how violent addiction is. Despite you enduring your addiction, you still come here Thursday. Your video's off, and we have rules. You can't talk, or your video can't be on if you're under the influence, but you're still here. That makes me know that they have community, and that's important to me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it just reminds me like how everyone's on their own timeline, and it's like great. It's fucking great that people get the help, get the community, learn the strategies. Like, they're going in somewhere to the person, and they may be activated later. They may like, light up all at the same time one day, and like that's the day that they're like ready to not look back. You can't control no one. They get to choose, but just allowing that and creating that. And what you're saying about shame, and like, God, the level of shame that comes with addiction is insane. It's so silent. It's so, and then you drink. The drinking increases the shame, and then you drink to feel the shame less. So it perpetuates itself. It creates more shame. It's insane. It's just madness. And I think that unshaming, being witnessed, bringing those secret things that you've done out into the open and feeling loved and still held in community, even though, you did this thing that you think is like so horrible and maybe legitimately was terrible.
Yeah.
And still having a chance to like be loved, be held, go forward, do it differently. So, so much like admiration and awe of you for creating these spaces and this club. And when I learned about you and SBGC, I was like, I mean, just as someone who had been through recovery and was like, I want to, I must support this group. And to everyone listening, I am a proud monthly donor to SBGC, and I want to encourage other folks to support this work. It's so important. It's so powerful. It's so healing. It's so needed, especially in this world where there's the devil is still here. So thank you so much, Katie, for coming on the show. And just, yeah, thank you for being you and everything that you're doing.
Can I say one last
Yeah.
thing? Okay. Okay. I don't know why I feel like to do this, but I do. Okay. Okay. So one, I do have to say thank you, because you have been a consistent supporter for our retreat. We do an annual retreat. You have given us resources and funds. So definitely do really have to thank you, honestly. Yeah, okay, I won't go into a long spiel, but I just feel like my relationship with you, and even though I feel like in the beginning it was, I'm gonna say it was transactional because you were supporting the club. I'll put it there. But then just seeing and hearing how you communicate about your tarot cards, how were there for me just to listen when I was going through things, how you're just words, just your newsletter. I feel, I'll say, I'm trying not to beat
Don't,
around the
I
bush, but
mean,
I'm not a lot
don't
like
sweat it.
people. Okay,
Just,
good.
well, don't
Okay.
talk about me.
Okay, all right, but I just have to just say thank you. Honestly, you have changed my just trajectory a lot, or my trust levels. Let's put it like that. I want to say thank you, and the other thing I wanted to
Yes.
say is that like so November 22nd of last year, 2024, I was a year free of alcohol, but I was still smoking, which I need to cut that out too, because I just do. And for me, there's nothing wrong with marijuana. Do what you want to do, but for me, it is a slippery
I
slope, because I
experienced
realized
that as well. Yeah.
oh,
I'm with you.
so are you abstinent from everything? When I mean like
No,
from
I do
marijuana and
not
alcohol?
drink at all. I haven't had a drink in 8 years. But yeah, I have had cannabis. Right now I'm doing like, I'm really it's a devil card year again, and I'm taking that seriously. So, I want to like enjoy it periodically, but because of like addiction stuff, it is a slippery slope. And right now I'm really like getting serious with myself about like it's good to have this conversation because it's like I remember what you said is true. Like when I embrace sobriety, more magic comes. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and also I was doing my calendar. I was doing a lot of stuff, which again, there's nothing wrong for other people, but just knowing where I'm at right now, my recovery from alcohol, which has only been a year, like I know I just need to be abstinent from everything. I already know like I need to just go on the straight and out. So like next year, I never celebrate my recovery date because I'm just always thinking that I'm gonna relapse,
Mm.
or I don't feel and recover because I was doing other things. But I just want to say I want to have it on record next year, well, this year, sorry, November 22nd, I am going to be a year sober from like all substances. And I just want to put it out there because I've never felt strong enough to put it out there. I've never felt like, okay, it's going to happen or anything like that. But I'm telling you, like, for the first time, I just feel like, okay, I'm going to make it. Like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to go a whole year without substances. Um, and that's gonna and November 22nd, 2024 is my sobriety date. Like it is. Even though I had a year of no alcohol, I just feel like this is my true sobriety date. I don't feel like I'm hanging on a just on the edge of a cliff. It just feels like this is it. So I just wanted to put it out there and have it on record. All
Yes,
right, that's
I
it.
love that. I support it. I believe it. I really feel honored that you would declare it here. And I can't wait to hear about all the beautiful things that flow from that in the year to come. And 1122 is a magic number. So that's perfect.
All
Well,
right.
thank you again. And yeah, you're amazing. Thank you for sharing everything you did today. And I'll be talking to you soon, I hope.
For sure. For sure. Thanks for having me on here.
Yes. Thank you so much to Katie for coming on the show. And thank you, listeners, for being here. I hope this episode gave you something you can use or feel into or follow in the weeks and months ahead. I think we're going to be working with the devil in a number of ways as the future unfolds. And as I mentioned, the devil is my card this year. So I will keep you posted. You can find out more about Sober Black Girls Club at soberblackgirlsclub.org. You will also find links in the show notes, not only to SBGC, but also ways to give to the club and a link to Katie's coming film. It'll be out on the 22nd of January, which is probably around the time this episode drops, sometime around that time. So if you want to check out that film, you'll find the link down there. You can also follow them on Instagram at Sober Black Girls Club. Link in the show notes as ever. They're doing really great work, really important work. So any support you can offer is much appreciated. And, while you're at it, if you feel like supporting this podcast, I'd love it if you gave a rating or a review or sent this episode or some other episode to someone you know who you think might enjoy it. Thanks again for being here. I love sharing with you. As I've said before, I look at the podcast stats and I can only see all the different cities and countries where the podcast is listened to. So just all the little places all over the map. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad you found your way here. And I hope this podcast continues to serve your creative and magical life. Bye for now.